And I was going to talk about the things that Joe did today with the pardons of people that were very, very guilty of very bad crimes, like the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs. So this is January 6th. These are the hostages. Approximately 1,500 for a pardon.
Yes.
Full pardon.
Full pardon or commutations?
Full pardon.
Rules for thee, but not for me. That was Donald Trump chiding Joe Biden for the preemptive pardons that he implemented on Inauguration Day in the final moments in the White House. But Donald Trump himself had his own sweeping pardons, which we'll get to in just a moment. But for the purpose of the conversation, let's just quickly go over what Biden did in his final moments in the White House. So it turns out that he decided to issue pardons of his immediate family members, including his brother James Biden and James's wife Sarah. He also did a preemptive pardon for his brother Francis and his sister Valerie Biden Owens and her husband John. So those were the family members who were preemptively pardoned. Biden says that these pardons were necessary because my family has been subjected to unrelenting attacks and threats, motivated solely by a desire to hurt me, the worst kind of partisan politics. Unfortunately, I have no reason to believe these attacks will end. It's just interesting that this is what was going on in the backdrop of Donald Trump's inauguration, because when Biden met with Trump yesterday for the inauguration, the first thing he said to Trump was, "Welcome home." So it's like pleasantries and complimentary attitudes, like face to face, but behind closed doors, he's gonna come after my family members and I need to do preemptive pardons. I just think the preemptive pardon thing, Cenk, is unacceptable. And like, did your family members commit crimes? Because if they didn't, how, like, what would they prosecute your family members for?
Yeah, so look, let's break this down. First of all, the pardon was supposed to be, you commit a crime, you get convicted, you show remorse. That was actually a critical part of receiving a pardon in the past. And then you've done some good things in the world and they give you a pardon based on that. Or they found evidence that you're clearly innocent and then they overturn your conviction. Well, they don't overturn your conviction, but they give you a pardon in that, in essence does that, right? So it started to break down actually with Gerald Ford, because he gave a full blanket pardon to Richard Nixon after Watergate so the country could heal. My ass, it was the elites covering for each other.
Come on, Gerald.
Okay, so he started the madness. Then Trump brought it back and started giving out pardons to people who had not been convicted yet, or that didn't show any remorse at all, right? So he just started mangling the pardon process. Now Biden has taken it over the top. So by saying, I'm going to give full blanket pardons preemptively before anybody's even investigated, let alone charged, let alone arrested, let alone tried, let alone convicted. And for this period of time, they were allowed to commit any illegal act they wanted, and you're not allowed to prosecute them for it. Well, brother, you said you were here to protect democracy. When you take what Trump did on pardons and make it worse, more undemocratic, how did you help? This is a terrible precedent.
It is.
And if you're a Democrat that supported it in any way, shape, or form, I don't want you coming back later and saying, I can't believe Trump's handing out pardons like it's candy for all these crimes that they committed in office, etc. Biden just set that precedent. Do you know that Trump considered giving preemptive pardons just like Biden did for everyone involved in January 6th and chose not to? So Trump actually showed a little bit of restraint there, and Biden didn't. See, this is what drives me crazy. Now everybody's being, in my opinion, Washington Post, LA Times, etc., being soft on Trump, right? That is not the correct lesson to learn. You're not supposed to be soft on Trump. You're supposed to be hard on Biden and everyone, all the politicians, Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah, when a politician does something wrong, you call it out, regardless of which party you identify with, regardless of which party the politician identifies with. It's frustrating. I mean, that's the reason why we started this story with that video. On one hand, you have Donald Trump, again, chiding Biden for doing the preemptive pardons, which I agree with. I chide Biden as well. But then he announces that he's doing sweeping pardons of January 6 rioters, which again, we're gonna get to in just a moment. But a few more Biden preemptive pardons before we get to that, because he also gave Anthony Fauci, the former director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at the NIH, a preemptive pardon. General Mark Milley, who was Donald Trump's former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he's given a preemptive pardon. And then the members of the House Select Committee that investigated Donald Trump and his involvement in attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election, those individuals have been given a preemptive pardon. And of course, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney is part of that group. And so the full and unconditional pardons for Fauci and Milley cover the period extending all the way back to January 1st of 2014. And Biden says he did so to guard them from potential revenge from the Trump administration. He also commuted the life sentence for a guy named Leonard Pelletier, who is a Native American activist who was convicted of killing 2 FBI agents back in 1975 on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. The guy's in his 80s, so I don't think he serves as any kind of threat to public safety. But I just wanted to mention that was one of the other pardons he did.
Yeah, so look, again, frustrated on both sides. So on the one hand, Republicans say like, oh, I can't believe these pardons are coming out of nowhere. No, wait a minute. Donald Trump is threatening all those people. Don't pretend he's not threatening them. Don't pretend that the right wing doesn't want to arrest Dr. Fauci, because they definitely do. And so it's like when either side gets the vapors, it drives me crazy. Like, I can't believe Biden preemptively pardoned Dr. Fauci. We weren't going to do anything. No, that's not true. You definitely were going to do something, right?
Well, okay, so let me pause on Fauci, because Fauci, look, the whole thing about the lab leak, right? At first, the media made it seem as though there's no truth to that whatsoever, no truth to that whatsoever. Fauci also said the same thing, and then later on it turned out likely that COVID came from a lab leak in China.
But what part of that has a doctor going to prison?
No, I'm not saying that he's.
But when I go on right-wing shows, I tell you guys all the time, they actually do agree with us on anti-war, anti-corruption, etc. But they also say things there, they don't hide their opinions at all. And they hate Dr. Fauci.
No, they do hate Fauci.
And they want to arrest them.
I know.
Because they disagree with him. They don't get it.
Okay, I don't deny that, okay? But one of the arguments that they make is that Fauci was involved in a cover-up in regard to that lab leak, that gain of function, testing and stuff that took place at that lab. They are alleging that Fauci knew about it, that he was involved with that lab.
They're alleging that because they allege a lot of things. Now, might that be true? It might, but that's super speculative. And so, look, guys, if they uncovered a crime, I'm all for prosecuting, okay? But, and I say the same thing about Trump as I do about Democrats and Fauci and anyone else. And so don't get me wrong, I definitely disagree with the preemptive pardons. They're garbage, there should be no such thing for Fauci or anyone else. But I don't want the right wing pretending that they weren't gonna dig and dig and dig and see if they could find Fauci jaywalking and go, that's it, we want him arrested. And why do you want Fauci arrested? Was it because you really thought he had massive violations of the law? No, you just don't like it, you hate him. And you hate him politically, and that's why you want him arrested. We can debate that all day long with any right winger, I'll debate you on that. I don't care, I know you hate him. That's not against the goddamn law, okay? So I understand why Biden did it, but he still shouldn't have done it. Because it's look, if you care about democracy, you care about protecting people who didn't commit any crimes, but you also care about protecting the process, especially from Biden, the hypocrite in chief, who said, oh my God, I am here to protect democracy and our system and the way we do things normally. And then the minute he had an opportunity, he's like, oh, I was just kidding. It's just personal. So my family members, they're protected. All these other guys are protected. I'm doing pardons, with the exception of Gerald Ford for Nixon that no one's ever seen.
This is also pretty unprecedented, right? Because look, the point that I'm trying to get at is I don't know what Fauci knew and didn't know about the lab leak, okay? What I'm trying to say is this is a pretty sweeping pardon. That, like, how does this exactly work? I want to understand. So does that mean that any criminality that Fauci or any of these other people might have engaged in, dating all the way back to January 1st of 2014, is now okay?
That's why it's insane.
That's insane.
Because what if, okay, forget Fauci. I mean, any one of them. I don't want to, needlessly defame anyone. Just pick a name out of a hat. What if they killed someone and we didn't know?
Adam Schiff.
Well, so sorry. Now they have a blanket pardon. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Biden was supposed to, he claimed that he got elected to stop this kind of stuff. And on his way out, he puts it on steroids.
He does, yeah.
And he opens a giant door for Trump or anyone else to drive a tank through that. And say, okay, now all my criminal friends are pardoned for anything they did, might have done, the things that you didn't discover, etc. Last thing on his family members, that was so gratuitous.
Yeah.
Because nobody was talking about those people, right? Now it makes me think, oh my God, maybe they did do something. Because I understand why you might want to protect Fauci and Milley, right?
But the family members?
But the family members, what Hunter, I get, they're targeting him, etc. Again, I don't agree with any of it, but at least I understand it. Your rando brothers and their wives, now I want an investigation. Now I'm beginning to think maybe they did take stuff. Maybe, and look, there's things floating out there. Take it with whatever giant grain of salt you want. That Biden wasn't in cahoots with Hunter or his brothers to do these scams that they kept doing, milking the Biden family name. But that Biden would conveniently call in when they were doing those business meetings. Not say anything about the business, not actually affect the business, but call in and go, hey, how you doing, Hunter? Hey, how you doing, bro, etc.
There's a lot of smoke.
Now I really want them investigated. Even if we can't convict them. Like, see, now it's so counterproductive. It shows guilty heart, guilty mind, etc. And now that brings us to Trump, and he goes, oh, you're doing pardons? I'll show you pardons.
And he did do sweeping pardons.